Hey guys, Paul here. Happy New Year. Hopefully you guys are enjoying your 2024. Today I wanted to talk about a topic that I saw discussed on Yu-Gi-Oh! Twitter recently, and that is the difficulty with making competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Content on YouTube. To be more specific, the difficulty with making in-depth, long-form competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Content on YouTube. So this started because somebody had screenshotted a comment that was left on one of MBT's recent videos where a commenter said, I would just love it if there could be, just this 2 hour long super duper guide to a specific deck, like let's say Unchained, right? That just covers, different opening hands, combos, builds, just like all the different things, right? Counterplay, matchups, everything. And a lot of people upvoted this comment. A lot of viewers were like, yeah, that would be really cool. I wish that there was like a channel that did exactly that. And so this got like posted on Twitter, and some people were sort of reflecting on why, as cool of an idea as that is, it probably wouldn't really work. And MBT himself also chimed in a bit and was explaining why a lot of content creators just do not do that. And it's because the reward for effort isn't really there. So allow me to explain as a YouTuber myself. Obviously, if you wanted to make a 2 hour long, just hyper in-depth guide to any given deck, it could be Unchained, it could be Rescue Ace, it could be Pirelli, it could be, Snake Eye, whatever, right? Insert favorite deck here. You'll run into a couple of problems. The first one is that sort of video is a huge undertaking. It would take a lot of playtesting, a lot of research, a lot of writing, a lot of just double checking everything to make sure that all of your information is up to date, it's completely correct and legal, and is relevant. And obviously that means that you're going to have to go through a lot of trouble just on the pre-preparation end. And then also you have to record it, edit it, produce it, right? And then you finally release this 2 hour long magnum opus that is just exactly what anybody would want if they're an Unchained player, right? How to make boards, how to break boards, how to deal with matchups, how to recover, all the different meta stuff. Then a ban list comes out. And suddenly, this huge piece of like super in-depth, nitty-gritty, hardcore, competitive content for a pretty popular deck that perhaps a lot of people want to watch is outdated. Why would I watch this video now if, the Unchained deck is completely different? Or maybe it's not a ban list, perhaps it's a new product getting announced. Some new support comes out that affects the Unchained deck, whether that's new support for Unchained itself, or the announcement of, like, let's say in 2022, Bestials, right? Would suddenly make playing a dark-based deck a little bit more complicated, or a little bit harder, or whatever. Or just new general Fiend support or something like that, right? So now, all of your work's kind of gone down the drain. I mean, it could even be something a little bit more low-key than those two things. It could just be that the meta itself kind of moves on. As we know, Yu-Gi-Oh's metagame is very fluid and fast-moving, so the same, deck, build, or whatever that did really well one weekend at a YCS is literally already outdated by the next weekend. One of the tenets I've always kind of had about competitive Yu-Gi-Oh is that metas don't ever really get completely solved. The decks that win on a given weekend at like a YCS are the decks that were best tuned to win that specific event that specific weekend. And so they won't necessarily do as well at a regional next weekend or even at your locals that following week because, things just change and they're dynamic. So anyways, getting back to the content sort of perspective on this, why wouldn't people do it if they were passionate still, right? Like if I'm just a huge Unchained guy and like I really love this deck to death, I could still make that video and maybe I could even update the video or something you might be thinking, right? Like, oh, we'll just make an updated Unchained guide. That's a lot of time and effort. And the thing is, YouTube doesn't really reward videos like that. That video has no real evergreen value, right? It's irrelevant after just a few weeks potentially. And also, if you spent that much time and you saw people just completely stop watching after a couple of weeks because something new was announced or just the meta moved on or whatever, that's really, really demoralizing. And a lot of content creators were actually chiming in saying exactly that. I know of a few small to mid-sized creators who make that exact brand of competitive content. And what you'll often see in comments, I've seen this in my own comments in the past years and plenty on other videos, is that there is a demand for that content, right? There are people who want hyper, just in-depth, nitty-gritty information, but the problem is that it's still very niche within a niche, right? So like if you want to, make that video for an Unchained player, or maybe let's take a different example, like a dinosaur deck, right? Or a zombie deck. There are people who like zombies or like dinosaurs or like Blackwings or like insert whatever deck you want here. but it's a small subset of Yu-Gi-Oh players. And so you have to kind of reach them and then fight with the fact that the video itself could be outdated within weeks. And then also just fight with the fact that long form has its own difficulties on the YouTube platform, right? YouTube's really big on like, how long do people watch? Are you actually going to sit and watch this 2 hour long monster of a video about a given deck? Like, sure, it could be really exciting and fun for the people who are like super duper zoned into that deck and like plan on playing it for the whole format and going to regionals every single weekend. But for the average person, not really the case. It's also why you do see a lot of channels, especially the larger that you get within the YugiTube space, go towards more generally broadly appealing stuff, right? Like that's kind of where you get these fun little series that are quirky and neat, like a progression series or that sort of thing, where it's kind of more about the personalities or being entertaining or kind of making this evergreen approach to Yu-Gi-Oh! Where it's like it doesn't really matter if you watch it today or tomorrow or next week, next month, next year. It can still just be kind of generally appealing to see Simo play Master Duel Masochist because it's just kind of wild and crazy and not very time sensitive. And that really sucks though, right? Because or it doesn't suck. I mean, it's good for them. Obviously, you want to grow on YouTube, and YouTube doesn't really reward kind of like putting a lot of effort into a video that has a shelf life of a week. But it does suck if you are the competitive type who wants information and wants it in depth and still wants to get it from your favorite content creator. They are not incentivized to do it, so where then could you find it? Well, MBT pointed this out on Twitter, and some other people agreed, and I've said this for a while myself, that it would be nice if there was a place for hardcore competitive Yu-Gi-Oh content that's kind of divorced from the whims of YouTube. Because while a YugiTuber might not be incentivized to make your 2 hour long, perfect, complete, unchained guide, I'm sorry, I just keep using that deck because it's on hand, but you know, even though a YouTuber might not really be incentivized to do it just based on how the algorithms work and kind of what pays the bills, maybe there could be a site that kind of focuses on that instead. And that is where sites like TCG Player come up. It's also where kind of devout communities like your Unchained Discord or your Insert Archetype here Discord come in, and so those do exist, and I think that that is a valuable resource. But it does sort of suck that we in the Yu-Gi-Oh space do not get as much competitive coverage and like in-depth competitive information as we probably could, and it's just because making that information is so difficult when it's really racing against the clock. So what do I think about it all personally? Because that is something I'm trying to kind of do more with these videos, is kind of give my own personal takes on it. As for me, I made the conscious decision years ago actually to shoot for evergreen casual Yu-Gi-Oh content. My goal on YouTube ultimately is to grow, is to reach a lot of people, is to kind of spread the general Yu-Gi-Oh gospel to as many eyes and ears as possible. And so I figured that the best way to do that would be to make, much more casual, broadly appealing content that has a bit of a longer shelf life to it. I felt that making deck profiles or making, competitive guides or meta-analysis just wasn't really my thing, because even though I was, at least at the time, a very competitive player who followed that stuff, I knew that making videos on it and putting that time and effort into like recording that stuff and editing that stuff and writing and all of that stuff was that it wouldn't really mean anything if the video just didn't last a long time. Now granted, there are plenty of channels that get by making tier lists every month or updated profiles every month or kind of doing that sort of thing. I'm not saying that the content itself is not useful, but just that it kind of does not it works a little bit against what YouTube itself will reward. And many content creators, you'll want to grow on the platform, right? So I guess I don't know. I don't know that there was really like a point to me talking about this other than just to share it, because I do feel bad when I see people in the comments like, why aren't more people doing this? Why aren't people making, these like super in-depth guides to decks? Why can't we get more of that? Why does it feel like, a lot of YouTube Yu-Gi-Oh content has been defanged a little bit? It's much more like progression series, classic-y stuff, DM pandering, whatever. And that's kind of the reason. It's just because it's what works better on YouTube. And I sometimes feel bad when I see newer creators put a lot of time and effort into making like a where to hand trap guide or a super guide or whatever to X deck or an analysis of an event, and then just sort of see that work kind of go down the drain after a few days. Even, when it comes down to stuff like a ban list reaction video, right? I used to do ban list reaction videos on my own, like on the main Team APS channel, but I actually stopped doing them because it's not really something that's super repeatable, right? Like the ban list just comes out when it comes out, and sure, you could get like a lot of views on a ban list reaction, but it's almost It's kind of like being the gas station that has the ice during the snowstorm or the power outage or whatever. People are coming to you for that because like they want the quick knowledge dump and like knowledge rush. But ultimately, they may not have they might not have watched your content before then, and they probably won't necessarily watch it afterwards. If you think about how a person just consumes deck profiles in general, I mean, it's a search and discovery thing. You want to find a Dino deck for January 2024, you type it in, you watch a few of them, but you maybe don't care that much about the channel itself that gave you the information. Especially because Yu-Gi-Oh competitive content is so quickly disseminated today too. Like, I know there are plenty of like Instagram and Twitter accounts that literally just share deck lists like as images, and now you can just take the image and like throw it in your group chat, throw it in your local's Facebook group or whatever, and like copy the list without even really needing to watch like a 10-minute long deck profile on it. You get the information you need and you dip. And I'm not saying that that's like a bad thing to do. I'm saying that that's just the reality of how a lot of people consume content. So it makes it a little bit less incentivizing for a person to focus hardcore on like, really getting that nitty-gritty competitive stuff going. So anyways, I want to know what you guys think about this and how you feel about it as more of a viewer. Because what I've shared today is more of like the content creators end of the sort of spectrum or situation. But what do you guys think? I mean, is that still something that you would watch? Is it something that you would be willing to share? Is it something that, you would really want to see a channel dedicated to that kind of hardcore stuff? And how does it, feel maybe, how do you think it feels for a creator if they maybe don't get the views that they want on that sort of content? Yeah, I don't know. Are there solutions to it? Should Konami be doing something? Should there maybe be another resource for people to get their competitive fix? I would love to hear about it. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. Pass turn.